so much for joining me today on the Financial Planner Life podcast. It's the first one in 2023. It's not because I've been lazy, I don't think anyway. I've just been, as we were talking about before the actual recording, I was focusing on organising my diary so I can go into the year with a bit more structure and I don't cause the chaos sometimes that I was causing last year. And sometimes you've got to give up something given you for a little while before, and it was podcasts. But here we go. I'm here to
listen, absolute pleasure. As you say, we were talking about this before, we both have sort of diary management, diary blindness, as I call it, kind of things to deal with. So yeah, but listen, really pleased to be here and a real pleasure to hopefully have my brain picked here and there on stuff that might be useful along the way.
Fantastic. Well, Lee, the Financial Planner Life podcast is all about shining the light on a career of those that work within the financial planning profession. It's not just about the financial advisors. There's operations managers, there's marketing managers, there's a plethora of different roles that are now coming into play within the financial planning profession. The days of the sales agent working out of his back bedroom are changing. You know, we've got lots of individuals that are entrepreneurial, that want to create startup businesses. We've got technology coming in and completely changing the landscape. So the idea here is to say, look, hey, all you second careerists out there, this is a fantastic career. There's a huge amount of opportunity. Why not change career, come over here, start a business, and let's make it absolutely pop. And of course, a lot of our listeners are already in the profession and they love learning from peers, whether they're paraplanners, administrators, financial planners, self-employed, employed. You yourself are somebody that has been on my radar. We've been communicating with each other on and off over the last sort of 6 months. You're the founding member and you set up Octo Members, which is a networking community for those within the financial services. And obviously it services financial planners. I think let's kick off with that first of all then. Tell us a little bit about Octo Members. Why did you set it up? What's it all about and who it's for?
Okay, sure. It was kind of conceived about 4 years ago, and myself and my co-founder Andy Brown, he came from the investment end, and I came from the financial planning end, and I was a 30-year advisor of one description or another. And we used to have these kind of long, detailed chats. He's from the west coast of Scotland, I'm from the east coast. So between the banter of the east versus west and the Rangers fan and all that kind of stuff, we often used to get into discussions about our roles, but our perceptions of roles. And I say, because he was involved with the mighty Prue Fund, billions under management, opaque with profits, all that kind of stuff. And I say, yeah, but it's opaque and why would you use it, whatever. And he would give me a different perspective. And he would say things like, yeah, but you financial planners, all about commissions, all about this, all about that. And we say, well, that's long gone, et cetera, et cetera. And we just had this view that wouldn't it be great if we understood each other a little better? Not just financial planners talking to financial planners, not just investment people talking to investment people, but if we actually talk to each other across the piece, from marketing, investment, fund selection, fund ratings, financial planning, paraplanning, marketing, whatever the disciplines were. If we all spoke to each other, shared information, shared best practice, picked each other's brains on stuff, there might just be better client outcomes further down the line. But that was the original concept. So we set it up with about 40 people. We went through the usual phase of, should we just have a WhatsApp group? Yeah, let's do that. We're already on some of that. And everyone's standards on WhatsApp are slightly different. What some people think is really funny, other people think, oh my God, that's not going to work. We then looked at Facebook, but around about the time we were thinking about this, Facebook had all its privacy problems with data analytica and selling data on and giving people access. That doesn't really work. LinkedIn was particularly clunky back then. I think it's got a lot better actually, but back then it was quite clunky, but we wanted a private social networking end was what we decided. And we thought about, should we have one big extranet? That might work. And then we realized an extranet is just a multiple use intranet. And the only reason people go on intranets are, what's my leave entitlement? What's the grievance procedure? Probably. So we thought that's not going to work. But by this time I'd found a platform in the States founded by Gina Bianchini, a fantastic Silicon Valley entrepreneur. She set up a huge extranet company business, or she'd been a co-founder of a business called Ning. She'd had this Damascene moment that didn't really work. What you wanted was all the benefits of social media, but within a gated community with control of your own privacy and behaviors and that kind of stuff. So I remember getting in touch with her and she said, well, it doesn't really work for us because you want a membership model, but you don't want to charge your members. I said, no, membership's got to be free. It's going to be a pay to participate for people who feed content into the network. She goes, well, that doesn't really work for us. But she said, I'm getting on a flight. When I get off the flight, I'll call you back with a yes or no answer. And she called me back and said, I thought about it and I'd love to do it with you because every entrepreneur loves a challenge and you've brought me a different thing to think about. And actually, I'd like to give it a go. And we've become firmly good friends, and we've loved using their platform. So the concept was cross-sector, sharing ideas, sharing best practice, showcasing good, showcasing great practice, publishing other people's content. It's aggregation, curation. We create a lot of our own as well, but it was about debate. It was about people who recognize in themselves they're not the finished article, that they want to keep developing, they want to keep learning from each other. And when they have knowledge they'd like to share, we give a forum to do it, where it's professional, it's a safe space. In fact, that's fed back to us by a lot of our women members, that they like the standards that we maintain within Octo. And we're not the only community out there. I know you've got a very strong one. You look at NextGen, you look at Institute for Financial Wellbeing, you look at Advisor Life Talk. There are lots of them, the Humans Under Management community. There's lots and lots of them. We all overlap now to some degree or another. And we're doing things in different ways, but similar ways. And everyone now, including you, is a content producer. So it's great to have a platform to be able to distribute content that you think is relevant, actionable, contextual, educational, and just genuinely helpful. And that was the concept. What are we now? Heading fast for 4,000 members. We're holding live events. We have daily content that goes up. Membership is still free and will remain so. Engagement's about 80%. So we feel like it's in a good place. Long answer to a short question, I know, Sam.
No, that's great. That's perfect. I love to hear about the history of why it's set up and the reasons why it's set up. 4,000 members strong. That's impressive.
Not quite, but not far.
Not far off 4,000, but still, that's impressive. How many of those have come over in the last year? Is it grown within the last year?
It grows weekly, interestingly. Yeah, we went. It seems it does this kind of. It grows, it plateaus, it grows, it plateaus, it grows, it plateaus. And I think that's probably like everything, but it's never really stuck on a plateau. We're still about 2/3 client facing, so advisors, paraplanners, discretion managers, wealth managers, with the other third coming from the investment, marketing, regulation, fintech, the associated roles. So I don't think there's ever been a week where we haven't added members in the sort of 3 and a bit years we've been going. So that's encouraging. And the thing I love to see is, because either Andy or I welcome everyone on. When people join, you will have had a message from me, a personal message saying, great to have you here, great to speak the other day, here's some stuff to get you going, here's some stuff not to do, and here's some stuff that will really help you, etc. And it's just wonderful now when people join, they say, introduced by a colleague, introduced by X, introduced by a friend. So we've grown in that network effect way that you hope would happen, and it certainly has.
Are you finding that you're getting a lot more administrators, power planners, financial planners within the financial planning profession actually joining? Is that sort of increasing? Are the numbers increasing? Do you have a kind of an idea of how many it's growing by in respect of that? Because obviously financial planning is the predominantly sort of focused area of financial planner life. I love the fact that, there's other people from other, investment managers, etc. And I like the cross communication, the debate that might bring. But, will somebody say, for example, listening to this podcast, you might be a couple of years into their role, or they could be thinking about becoming a financial planner, or maybe a year in, or whatever it might well be. Will they find a place there, and will they get what they're looking for? Can they connect with others and learn from others? And
they can. So we have some kind of watchwords, which actionable, contextual, debatable, and educational, one way or another. So the content you get on Octo, because as I say, we curate and aggregate content, ideas, thought leadership. But what you will never find is a fun fact sheet or the stuff that's just not relevant. And we have members, you're right to ask the question. We've got administrators, we've got back office people, we've got consultants who come in and help practices get going. So the bulk of the 2/3 of our membership is client facing, but the other third of it, give or take, are in other roles. So, and many of those will be support roles of one way or another: paraplanners, office administrators, operations people, whatever it happens to be.
I always used to see some of the more disgruntled financial advisors commented on money marketing and whatnot. And it used to be like this bitching match between financial advisors. I mean, sometimes I get a bit fearful of these communities. You chuck too many people with a lot of opinions in one place, it just becomes this kind of echo chamber of ego. What's it like within that community? Is it helpful? Is it constructive? Or do you get these debating situations a bit like Twitter, where it can almost get a little bit toxic sometimes?
Hey, I've never seen one like Twitter. Twitter can get toxic really quickly. And I even see people who are friends of mine sometimes think, wow, I can't believe you just said that. Sometimes it's a sin of omission or a sin of error. I mean, I made one, just to go aside for a second. It was brought to my attention by a really good friend of mine, a very high profile financial planning practice leader, but I'd responded to him on LinkedIn and used an emoji at the end of my very short sentence. And I thought, I was obviously busy, quick. I probably used the emoji I thought was right, or probably even worse for me, I mistyped what I wanted to do, fat finger symbol or something. And it left someone in his firm feeling quite uncomfortable. And he brought it to my attention, and he said, don't worry, I put their mind at rest, because that's not you. If anything, you are overly polite. So I brought it to their attention, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. So I thanked him for doing so, and I got in touch with the individual, and we agreed that it was, it wasn't malign in any way. And she said, actually, upon reflection, thank you for supporting it. And if I just took the emoji off, the sentence was great. Just the emoji slightly altered the meaning. And I took that on board. And I even wrote an article the other day that went onto LinkedIn talking about beware the power of these wee emojis, but because they can mess stuff up. But going back to the original question, you never see snark on Octo. You just don't. Now, it might go on because members can private message others. Think WhatsApp within the app, direct messaging within the app. You can do it to individuals or you can do it to small groups. It might go on person to person, but it's never, only once has it happened. And we actually red carded that individual. I got up and said, and I don't even like football analogies, but I said, listen, play the ball, not the man. Play the ball, not the man. And what you've done there is you've been disrespectful, unprofessional, and you cannot act like that on here. We have a code of conduct. And actually, what you've done is you've questioned their qualifications, which are beyond reproach. They actually have a doctorate in the subject matter that they're talking about. I said, right, so those are the rules. It's my club. It's not just mine. It's all of ours club, if you know what I mean. But if I'm one of the policemen, I say, listen, withdraw it or alter it. You can still disagree with what they've said, but go for the subject matter, not the individual. That particular individual refused. And I said, well, thanks, but I'm just going to revoke your permissions. And he huffed off, and he's asked twice to rejoin, saying he'll behave. And actually, I just can't be bothered. I despair sometimes of the way sometimes the discourse down the Twitter stream begins to go. So I hear exactly what you're saying. We've all had it. If you put your head above the parapet, you will get it from time to time. If you're like me, you don't, big broad shoulders, had it all before, don't really care, but you do. It sort of hits you a bit. I remember speaking at a conference. Did I warn you there might be long answers to short questions? I remember speaking at a conference after I just sold my financial planning practice to my team. Yeah. And I was asked by the conference organizer to do a soapbox slot, 10 minutes. If you were starting again, what might you do differently, knowing what you know today? So, one of those blue sky kind of. So I stood and talked about, marketing is so much different to when I started. Social media is there. Professional connections have always been a big thing for me. We might come to that later. But I said, I'd probably you've just got to look at investment propositions. Now, the whole index stuff versus active management, that's got to play in somewhere. And also, of course, the charging structure, the value structure. And of course, we've got consumer duty coming this year. And I talked about, people that, I call them Henry's, high earners, not rich yet. I didn't coin the term. I read it somewhere from something out of the States, Michael Kitch's probably. And I said, it's about delivering value. And if you look at what is stripped out of portfolios over an accumulated period of time, you've got to think about the value there. And of course, one of the trades reported it as Lee Robertson, when I start again, I'll undercut expensive IFAs, which is not what I said at all. But of course, it was reported that way. And then whoosh, in it came, people I'd never met, people I didn't know, few I did, by reputation at least. And you'd go, wow, that is ferocious. And this particular trade publication, because they love that clickbait stuff, they didn't let my response to it come in until 2 days afterwards, by which time people who had been at the conference, who were financial planners, were weighing in, saying that's not what he said. And if you were there, if you actually watch the video of him speaking, this is stuff we've got to think about constantly and do that, and he was right to bring it up. So it kind of fizzles out. But it's ferocious when you're in that maelstrom, and people you don't even know are maligning your integrity and all sorts of stuff. So if you're a younger person in our sector, or even worse, if you're a younger person thinking about joining financial services and you see all that going on, I don't know, would you think this may not be where I want to go? We talk about, and I do, financial planning as a profession. You never see the other professionals pulling themselves apart like that.
No.
Oh, we've got a particular situation going on. I don't know the rights and wrongs of it. I've got my own views around one of the professional bodies at the moment. And some people are being very temperate, very professional, and others are being very intemperate, and I would say bordering on unprofessional in the way they're talking about it very openly in open social media, where their clients, their professional connections, other participants or potential participants in financial advice might be looking on and going, wow.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Is it a certain, I'm not being ageist here in any which way. Do you think it's a certain generation that don't seem to, I don't know, understand the impact of what you put out on social media? Where am I trying to get at here? There's a lot of people that I know who are a bit older generation, 50 plus, right? Let's say that. And they're way more vocal and way more, less caring what people think about what they say, which I respect. I think you should be yourself, you should be authentic, but sometimes it's coming across as being like whingy and moany. And like you're saying, if somebody who's, I don't know, younger looking at that, or other people, it's like you may have a point, but you sound like such a miserable old bugger. Like, change the tone, be more, I don't know, constructive around your point instead of being so aggressive. Some people are really aggressive on social media, I found, especially with the older advisors. Yeah,
listen, it's an interesting thing, and I guess not an advisor now, but I was still an advisor into my 50s. I think there is something about experience. There is something about successful financial planners are often very entrepreneurial. Therefore, they have a go-get kind of mindset, and that probably spills over into the way they sometimes communicate. And lots of people that I really respect, and sometimes I see them on social media thinking, "Oh, I wouldn't have said that," but that's not to say they're wrong. I think as long as they keep it professional and non-aggressive, then it's good. But we did something in Octo not so long ago about a particular subject matter. And the person because we love debate, not everyone's going to agree all the time. And it's through this debate that you hopefully get a more rounded, even if it just reinforces what you thought all along, at least you kind of sense-checked it.
Yep.
And this particular individual who put a lot of time putting his slides together, did a great webinar for us, got quite a beating on social media over one of his thoughts on this particular piece of legislation. And wow, he got a beating. And I thought, what? He's knowledgeable, he's respectable, he's respectful, he's professional. He put a lot of time and research into doing that. It just seemed a little bit personal just because they disagreed. So I hear what you say, but it's not just the younger advisors. I have seen stuff from younger advisors. I think, wow, for a generation that is, I think, genuinely more in tune with their mental health, with the social norms, with social niceties, that grew up with social media when those of us who didn't maybe struggle at times. It's not just, but you're right, it does seem to lean more towards the older advisor.
Which I don't mind, because I like a bit of debate, and I find it quite fun, and I can see it for what it is. I just worry sometimes that they don't see what they look like from the outside. And I think, come on, you've got to have, there has to be a balance here. Like, change the tonality of what you're saying, because and what you're saying, like, there's a guy I know, what he says is spot on. I totally agree, right? I totally agree, but it's the delivery. But it causes reaction, it causes debate, it causes conversation. And I think often it's about like chucking a grenade out there and seeing what happens. And I think some people just naturally like that.
But some people like to do it. Some people do quite like to do that. And I think there is something about that, about stimulate debate. And we've all got friends, haven't we, who will almost argue, or relatives who will argue the opposite of what they believe just because they want to have that debate.
Yeah.
So, you do see that. But I think you're right. Sometimes you think, well, I'm not sure. But then, of course, Twitter particularly, although Twitter, I think next month's about to have much longer word counts coming in. But at the moment, what is it, 240 words or 280, or whatever it is. Sometimes what you think is humorous, a short, snappy, punchy, humorous retort, actually, and you see it in short emails as well, you think, because you can't see people smiling. You can't see what they're doing on their face, which is why I always say in my practice, face-to-face beats telephone, beats email, beats WhatsApp, or whatever. Because you and I right now, even on screen, we can see when we're smiling, when we look a bit perplexed. You get all those cues, physical cues, that you don't get through the written word on social media. So I think all of that wraps. There's lots of layers to the onion. But I think there is bad behaviour on social media, but we certainly don't get it on Octo, and actually we wouldn't tolerate it anyway.
And that's the part of bank communities. I was chatting to you before, wasn't I? And I was like, I would like to set up a closed community, but at the same time, I don't think I would. I'm not sure it's for me to do it. But one of the benefits that I see is that it is closed, right? And that you're not public. Therefore, your opinion about the profession is for those that are in the profession to have that discussion. Whereas having an open debate and almost an argument on social media, there's a real high risk that you are going to be seen by your clients, employees, and the interpretation of what you're saying can be bent out of shape, and you could potentially lose clients, alienate yourself based on the tone of how you're coming across. And all of a sudden a client doesn't want to see you anymore, or people don't come to see you anymore, thinking, well, why is that? It's because, well, your personal brand's been slightly changed, because out there in the social world, you've been speaking your mind about things that you're passionate about, but you're coming across as a bit of a aggressive person or something like that.
Yeah. But what I would say is many clients flock to, birds of a feather flock together, is what I'm trying to say. And often clients will join an advisor because they chime somehow with the way they act, the way they talk, their social standing, their geographical location, all that stuff plays in. Yeah. And very often people like a particular type of advisor, they gravitate to, and their friends who also are similar gravitate to. So you build a network of like-minded people as clients. So you could overstate that. For me, I used to get a lot of work from professional connections. So I was very careful on LinkedIn, particularly the professional social network, to call it, if there is such a thing, to be uber polite, uber professional, uber helpful, because playing it out there is not the place to do it. But I also think LinkedIn, a bit like Octo and the other communities, you've got to be the real you. Your picture is there, your contact details are there. If you're being unpleasant, you're very identifiable. Yeah, that's not always the case on social media. Memes and even on the, they all say they're getting better at it. I'm not entirely sure, but if you look at some of the trade publications, you will see, GH22 has put the boot into someone. You think, who the hell's GH22?
No idea.
I made that up, by the way. I'm sorry for GH22 watching.
Networking is obviously at the heart of who you are as a person. It's part of your intrinsic values. I mean, we've spoken about your business, Investment Quorum. You were there for 18 years running
by the time I left, 18,
running a city-based financial planning firm. We talked about you moving to London, picking up a Yellow Pages and thinking, I got to start somewhere. I've got to build a network here. It's funny how you ended up now, your job, one of your key sort of passions is Octo Members, those, creating a community for those to network within the financial planning profession. But a lot of those that are joining the profession or quite early on in their career, and some that have been there for quite some time, do struggle with networking, do struggle with building professional introducers, do struggle to build client bases and client banks. Let's talk a little bit about your history then and your experience of running your own business and what you did to really get out there and win new client relationships. You touched on it with professional connections. That's obviously an area. Some people don't have the confidence to go out there and do that. So just first off, Investment Quorum there, 18 years, that's running your own business in the city, right? How did you get that off the ground, and how did you start winning clients, and what did networking and building professional relationships, what part did that play in it?
Okay, so it was probably off the ground before it got going, and I'll explain why. So I came out of the armed forces. I was going to join a civil service department. They mucked around with start dates and all that kind of stuff. I had to earn a living. There was a very low barrier to entry, and all these free magazines that they used to, I don't know if they still do, give away at tube stations, always had financial services sales jobs in them. Ala Dunbar, Imperial Trident, MI Group, Porchester Group, Reliance Mutual, all these And I remember going for an interview at the MI Group, which was based in Centre Point in London. There was all Porsches parked outside, and you went up and you met the sales manager who said, "Wow, I see those Porsches downstairs. You can have one of them this year," and all that. And it was just, Trevor Deves. Anyway, for anyone that doesn't remember it, go and look it up. I ended up going to Ala Dunbar. I don't know, it sounded vaguely Scottish to me. Turned out it wasn't. It'd been set up by South Africans. But anyway, there you go. And I did a year direct sales, and I knew no one in London. Well, I knew 2 people in London. I wasn't going to hit them up for sales. So it was Yellow Pages or nothing else. And that's a hard slog, But to be fair, it was round about the start of retirement annuities became personal pensions, contracting out SERPs, all those old style pension stuff. So there was an appetite. And even the government advertised on TV that you should get pensions and all that kind of stuff. So I made just enough to get by, but it was a hard slog. And there was a hierarchy of sales manager, and your sales manager shouted at you and his sales manager shouted at him, who then shouted at you all the way up. Then they went to the wine bar at lunchtime, had loads of wine, came back, shouted at you, and then drove home at night. And it went all over again the next day. So after a year, I went mortgage broking, did 2 years in the Halifax Group, loved it, really, really enjoyed it. Hard work, 12 points a day. We drove big, fast cars. We were Thatcher's children. It was, but you fast run, and I got made a sales manager there, so I had a team working for me, and I realised I'd become one of what I didn't like, which was I got paid a bit on what they got paid and stuff. Then I joined a bank group, so I've done the whole thing: direct sales, mortgage broking, went to a bank group, bank assurance for 5 years. Worked out after 5 years that if I did everything almost exactly the opposite of the way they wanted it done in the bank group, I'd probably be all right as an IFA. Build long-term relationships, do it properly. So I became an IFA practice of its day. That went for 5 years. By this time, I'd begun to hear what was going on. I wanted to go fee-based. Our network at the time couldn't deal with fee-based. They didn't like that because, in effect, they were selling distribution, it turned out, to life companies and all that kind of stuff. So I went fee-biased with Investment Quorum. But what I did was I split away from my business partner at the time, just split the client bank 50-50. He paid me £1, he'd get the name, and I set a brand new one up called Investment Quorum. So that was the track record. So I took those 5 years worth of clients from the first business into Investment Quorum. But how did I get clients? Nobody ever believes this, but I'm a natural introvert. But I've learned to what Chris Budd from IFW calls a high-performing introvert. I've learned that you've got to overcome these issues as best you can. And I thought, what are the ways to get clients? You've got to meet them in places that they want to be met, want to explain, to be discussed, those kind of things. Or the smarter way is to find other people to make introductions to you. How does that work? Happy clients introduce people to you. And I never, ever, ever have asked for a referral. Even in direct sales, I didn't do that. You're happy now. Can you tell me 3 of your friends? Or all those old tricks. It wasn't me. But you seed your conversation with things like, thank you for, coming along. I know you've been introduced by Susie, and Susie's been a client for many years, and that's how my business thrives, by happy clients introducing people. And you seed it very early on, and that's how you grow your business. So that's a very soft way of doing it. It sounds slightly blunt when you say it out loud like that. And the other one was professional connections or centers of influence. I had 2 centers of influence in the Lloyd's market, so I ended up with lots of Lloyd's insurance brokers, underwriters, deputy underwriters, etc., and the rest came from solicitors and accountants. And you can't have a panel of 20 or 30 or 40 solicitors and accountants. You need 2 or 3 really good people that you've explained and explained and explained how you do, the sort of client you look, how you can help. And over time, and it doesn't happen overnight, over time, they begin to refer and they begin to understand what that is. You refer back to them, it becomes a reciprocal arrangement. And actually, I always started by making referrals first, and you learn hard that way that sometimes their standards aren't as good as you thought they were, or that you would expect of your clients, etc. But you work it out. So it's about happy clients and happy professional connections who understand what you do, and centers of influence who are in effect happy clients.
So center of influence, just sort of delve into that a little bit, because it's not a term I've ever come across.
Okay, there are people who naturally, and I'm going to explain this kind of clumsily, but bear with me. So there are some people who are just well-respected, well-liked, well-regarded, fun to be around, known as knowledgeable, known as connectors, who all, I know somebody that can do that type of people. I know exactly who you need to speak to. And I've always called them centers of influence. And I had a couple in the Lloyd's market. They were Lloyd's brokers. One was incredibly larger than life. Everyone said he looked like Brian Blessed, and bless him, he did. And he had a character just as big and just as fun and engaging. And he was one of these people that thrived on making introductions to other people. Just thrived on it. Listen, I know who can help you there. I will put you in touch with that. And if you get into that circle, you're away. Because these guys, and you become part of a group of people who respect each other, who've been introduced by each other to each other, and you become part of that mini community, if that makes sense.
So I think, was it David Priestley, I think there's a book called Key Person of Influence, which is very similar, to be that key person. There's a key person of influence within a specific niche. So for me, I want to become that key person of influence within financial planning when it comes to talking about careers.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And what's the other one? Trusted advisor. People talk about the trusted advisor. That needn't necessarily be a financial planner or a financial advisor. That could be someone within a social group of people, or a professional group of people, or a collegiate group of people who is trusted to know people who know people. So whenever they make a referral to someone for some kind of professional service, it stands up. They were what they were described as.
Do you find that it works quite well across financial services? So like your Octo Members is a collection of different people from different walks of life within financial services. Do financial advisors, is it advisable for financial advisors to connect with those within financial services, look for people within it, or to step outside of it into micro niche, completely other areas? So someone could be, I don't know, they could be an estate agent who sells houses to really high net worth individuals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you will work it out if you go out and try it out, if that makes sense. So yes, you're absolutely right. The thing about within financial services, a number of my clients, when I was in investment quorum, worked within financial services. They didn't work in retail financial advice, but they might have worked in fund sales or financial services marketing or whatever. But the thing about your peers, and this is what I keep saying, your other financial planners are your peer group, not your competition. There aren't enough financial planners out there. There aren't enough paraplanners out there. So no financial advisor or financial planner that I know has trouble finding clients at the moment. There aren't enough people on the ground. So they're your peer group, and they know things you don't know, and you know things they don't know. And if you share ideas and share best practice and share what works for you, you look at groups like the Information Exchange, what used to be the West End Brokers Group I was a member of back then. We used to meet once a month and just kick stuff around. What's working for you? I just facilitated a fantastic group out in Spain towards the end of last year. And that was it. The first day was facilitated about what was working, what wasn't. And the second day, it was all about what's vexing you? What are you tripping up over? What issue have you got in your business that the rest of us as a group think tank can bring our collective knowledge, experience, battle scars to bear on to help you resolve that particular issue. And that's all Octo is now. I'm sure that's what NextGen is, although they're very training focused, and I think they do a brilliant job, truth be told. They bring like-minded people together to learn from each other, because nobody has got the monopoly on knowledge, and not one of us is the finished article.
I think historically, and I've seen it over 14 odd years of me recruiting into the financial planning space, I think financial planners are starting to open up. They're starting to listen to each other, and they're starting to collaborate more. But I do think it's these communities that are bringing people together, and those ones that want to seek out collaboration and not competition, that are open to listening to others and thinking, maybe I'm not doing it the best way. Maybe someone else can help me. It's that kind of dropping the ego a little bit. It's dropping the guard and the pride and connecting and working together. And you're right, because there's so very few financial planners and just so many clients that need financial advice. And we're not even talking about like the clients that are out there, the 95% that an advisor might not work with because it's not cost effective to work with. And I think the financial advisors that start to communicate and talk with the advisors that are implementing technology that allows them to speak to the Middle England clients that used to go to, Barclays Bank or HSBC to get their advice. I think there's so much to learn around that area. So it's like the tech companies can help you, the investment managers can help you, the financial planners can help you. You've just got to let your guard down a little bit, connect, come together. And like you say, kick the can around a little bit and share some ideas.
Well, you've just described the reason d'etre for Octo. But you look at the early Institute of Financial Planning, Nick Cann was CEO, and the leading lights of Rebecca Taylor and Julie Lord and Marlene Outram and Neil Bailey, Mike Godfrey. There were people to aspire to. I was a similar age, maybe a little bit younger, but they opened my eyes to fee-based planning long before it was compulsory, long before the regulator got to that point with RDR. They were saying you should be fee-based, you should be doing this, you should be getting high-level qualifications, you should be learning from each other. And their branch meetings were fantastic. And then you bring that all the way forward to the conferences being run today by people like Kathy Harrison at the Vera Group. You look at NextGen, I keep referring to them, you look at IFW, our Octo event, the progressive planning event last September, 80 planners in the room, sharing best practice. Not a word talked about tax rates or sustainable pension drawdown rates. It was about how they were building the business, how they were scaling, how they were going micro niche, how they were building social impact, and whatever it was just such a cracking day. And I think if you're curious and want to improve, those are the communities you should seek out within the profession. Absolutely, 100%. That's how we all learn. If you're not bothered, if you've got enough clients coming through the door and you don't want to change, you don't want to improve, you don't want to change the way you operate, then fine, don't engage with them. But you know what? I think life is more rewarding and richer when we learn from each other and we share what we know together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because, as you say, at heart, you're an introvert. So that's but the thing is that you could be like an introvert that is massively inquisitive. It doesn't mean that you're an introvert, therefore you don't want to talk to anybody. You're an introvert that wants to learn, but also it values human connection. So you can be a social introvert. You can be, do you know where I'm kind of going with it?
Listen, I do. Chris Budd and I remember Chris Budd, of IFW fame, and before that, a great financial planner. He and I sat having breakfast in a sort of greasy spoon cafe in Smithfields, and it was a freezing cold day, and it was a kind of slight blizzard, not blizzard, a few snowflakes. I shouldn't say blizzard, a few snowflakes blowing by. And we sat having this discussion about introversion and how you have to operate and how you move forward and all that kind of stuff. And we both agreed that we are eternally curious. So we can be introverted, but because we have a deep set curiosity to learn, to hear, to evaluate, to judge, that really helps you as an introvert. You don't need a hug every 2 minutes of the day. And I'm sure my slightly Protestant Scottish upbringing doesn't help and all that kind of stuff. We weren't a family of huggers. But there is this thing about if you're curious and want to improve, and the military did this to me. I was a hopeless high school student. Then I went into the military and learned that the way to get on was to be good at what you did. You ended up in smaller teams, you got more responsibility. And that was because you learned quickly and you excelled, small increments, getting better all the while. And I carried that through into, I hope, my business career. I was a very young manager when I went to the Halifax. Got made a very young manager within the Halifax group. Was a highly successful down in London consultant within the bank group, and then set up two really decent IFA practices, one of which still survives and thrives today. And hopefully I left it in good shape with a great team who are still there caring for the clients. But that's about curiosity, learning, and just wanting to be that little bit better, because your clients, they respect it and they understand it. If you know what you're talking about, you've learned your craft, but beyond that, you're well versed in current affairs and sector affairs and all the other stuff. It really shows to clients, I think.
I think so. And I think it's okay to be, and I think some people kind of worry a little bit about being curious because they have this fear that it shows that they're weak, that they're, if they're asking somebody a question, especially somebody who's a peer, that they don't know what they're talking about. And it's kind of like ditch that, because so many people are happy to share information. I've learned that, one of the best, I'm a very curious individual. I love going out and talking to people, and I'll go in there. If I don't know what I'm talking about, I might go in there with a bit of an idea, but I let the individual I'm talking to share their thoughts and feelings on it, and it usually then triggers something in me and leads me. I had a great meeting with NextGen, 2.5 hours, and we came off that, and we said to each other, like, that was amazing. Like, we came in there with an idea, neither of us knew how to execute it, but we left with a plan.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and I love that. I absolutely love that. And sometimes it takes a couple of meetings to really get that feel, to get that flow. But there's an energy there. That person's got the knowledge that you're looking to gain from them. And if they're continuing to talk to you, they're curious about you as well. So you're bringing something to the table that they're interested to learn more about as well. And it brings me into that, the mentoring side. When you mentor somebody, well, I mentor a few people, but when you mentor somebody, you don't go in it from a place of arrogance that I know more than you, because the teaching tends to open you up to new conceptions and new perspectives, and you learn a lot from trying to help somebody else. You don't realize just how much you take from it, from actually stepping up and being that mentor.
Look, I've written on this in Octo and elsewhere, that I learn at least as much from my mentees as I give to them, and I think everyone has their own point of view, their own lens through which they see life, or their profession, or their career, or their sector, whatever it happens to be. And I know you have a lot of younger participants follow this podcast, and never put up with someone not answering your questions, or else they're the wrong people to be asking, because I think it behoves all of us who care about our profession to help each other at whatever stage we're at, which is why I love mentoring. I'm also a visiting lecturer at university. I love to give back that way. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. And if someone is not willing to share their experience or expertise, as long as you're not tripping them up every 2 minutes, but you frame the questions right, and you learn from it, and you implement it, or you adapt what they've said to your way to help you get to where you want to get to, then you should never, ever worry about asking questions. Better to ask and get a bad, and you rarely will. In my view, you very rarely get people in financial services, stop asking me that ridiculous question. If they do, you're in the wrong organization.
No, absolutely. There's no denying it either. We're in a situation at the moment within financial planning. We're talking about young people here, aren't we? There's not enough young people coming in. It's a very aging population of financial planners. Outside of financial planning, paraplanners, administrators, there's a lot of younger people in now. And I put a post out recently. I think there's a lot of people in those back office type functions that are probably sitting on level 4 qualification that aren't either confident enough to step up into the role of financial planner, or they enjoy doing what they do, and that's fine. A career in power planning, for instance, or compliance or administration or whatever is absolutely fine. And if that's what you want to do, you want to do. But for those that have got an aspiration to become a financial advisor, and I think this is a good area to look at right now. We talked about it in the office today, because we were talking about, I got a guy who's just joined me, and he's like, well, who would be the best fit for an academy? Would a graduate be a good fit for an academy? And I said, I'm talking about academies like your M&Gs, your St James's Place, your Quilters. My answer to that was no. I don't think a graduate straight out of university going into an academy that's designed to put them straight into a financial planner role at the age of 21, and I say financial planner as in client-facing financial advice, I don't think it's the right route. I think a graduate route, I think a gentle foray into financial planning as a younger person, understanding administration, understanding the power planner route, understanding how the dynamics of the business work, getting a really strong foundation, learning the life skills that go along with that, learning how to interact with clients, being gently introduced to that environment, not sort of the stress and everything that comes from not hitting targets or not bringing business in, or maybe not even having that experience of going out and networking. You've never really sat down with somebody and really had a deep and meaningful open conversation with somebody in their 40s, 50s about the future, about their future. And that's not to belittle somebody straight out of university. That's just my thoughts and feelings. I think you would be better off to, I say it to people, there's no rush. You could spend 5 years working in financial planning as an entry level admin, power planner, trainee route. You could be 25, 26 years old going into a financial advisor role with 5 years of experience behind you. Your candidature in the market will be huge. you'll be marketable, your knowledge will be massive, your foundations will be massive, and you have you're just in a better position, I think, to step up into that financial planning position. And I think the qualifications, if you're serious about that, will follow. You could be chartered at 25 years old with the solid background behind you. The second career risk element is someone sitting in a role, 30 years old, they've been smashing out marketing, sales, they're a business developer, they've got all those transferable skills. They might be in a bit more of a financial position where they can fund themselves to be self-employed. A lot of these academies are self-employed, right? They perhaps, the wife or the husband is happy for them to go out because they don't have as much on the mortgage or whatever it might well be. I think they can be best suited to those academies. I was interested in what you think. You run a business, you've seen people come through your business, train, develop, become great advisors, you network with lots of people. Do you think somebody's coming out of university should go straight into a financial advice role, or should they just find their feet first?
It's a good question. And I think, like any question such as that, there's no 100% answer. I lean more towards your way of thinking. If you're going to be talking to people about money, life, future goals, current issues, it might help to have some of them. If you have a mortgage, you understand what people are going through with mortgage interest rates rise. It's an example. If you have dealt with the loss of a close relative or whatever, all these life things that as you get older, you just accumulate in your knowledge bank. So I guess it gives you more empathy as well as sympathy. A given nowadays is of course get your qualifications. I don't know so much about those academies. I know they exist, I know what they do. I would hope they don't just drop them straight out of the academy into giving financial advice, because I think we need to be supported and mentored and husbanded through, if that's the right phrase, to get better all the while. I go back to my practice. We had somebody that was pretty much one of the youngest ever chartered financial planners and was frightened to death of clients. It doesn't matter what we did, he just didn't want to do a client meeting on his own, and yet he was a chartered financial planner. And I think that was lack of life experience for him, because he just, as people spoke to him about these big life issues of money, retirement, life assurance, death of a partner, he didn't have anything to draw beyond the textbook. So I get what you're saying, but do I think there are exceptions? Young people who are particularly good, particularly empathic? Yeah, I think there are. And I've met some of them over the years. But I think you're probably right. Unless they're going to be looked after as they exit the academy and there's some form of ongoing skills training. We used to call it soft skills training. That phrase will do to help them with that. Then they will probably fail, particularly if they are self-employed. They just won't be able to attract and retain enough of the right type of client who understands what they're trying to do. But there are always exceptions. And the one thing I would say about youngsters coming through compared to my day is they're incredibly well trained. They're at qualification levels. We didn't have any. Some of us got qualifications before they were compulsory. The vast majority didn't, whereas now the vast majority do have these qualifications and have learned a lot as they go. And now it's about bolting on the empathy, the life experience, the soft skills on top of that. And that's where I think particularly Next Gen do a fantastic job with some of these young, and you too. But some of these organizations out there are doing fantastic soft skills training with people.
No, I agree. With your business investment quorum, you're sort of on the tail end really of social marketing, digital marketing, or were you? Did you get involved in that at all? Have you had much experience around that? Is it a bit of cloak and dagger? Is it a bit black magic, or do you believe in the power of digital marketing to attract clients?
Personally, I do. I absolutely do, and I think it's gone from being a black, not very understandable art. There's so much evidence now of how it does work. It's a slow burn, but if you lean into really good experts and you look at Phil Bray at Yardstick, you look at the guys at Clients First, you look at Faith Liver's Edge, all sorts of these agencies that do really, really well. Now, listen, I'm not great at things like SEO and SERP and all that kind of stuff, but I understand if you message consistently and well and often, it does attract clients. Not long before I sold my practice, we attracted a £6 million investment in through our website because we made sure it was consistently updated. Everything was going on all the time. There's nothing worse than looking at someone's website. The last blog thing was about 8 years ago or 8 months ago. You think they don't care. Whereas if you've got great social proof, great commentary. I don't mean just taking stuff off Chat GTP and just saying, 8 reasons to use financial advisor, that kind of rough stuff. But if you've got well thought out client communications and potential client communications using social, I think it's a great broadcast. I was a big believer in it. Not everyone in my firm was as big a believer as I was, but every now and again a decent client would pop up, which meant, it sort of proved itself. So I like it.
For the advisors that are sitting here today listening to this podcast, perhaps they might be employed advisors and they're a bit fed up with being employed, and they can, they see the opportunities out there. They're probably maybe not getting the lion's share. Maybe they're bringing in a lot of business but not getting rewarded for it. Client ownership, these issues, and also the obvious attraction to building a client book that you can eventually sell and exit. What advice would you have to those individuals if they were making that transition to employed to self-employed? Looking back on your 18 years of investment quorum, for example, I know I keep going back to that. I know you've had jobs in different areas. What do you think would be the blueprint? What do you think that they should do within their first 3, 6, 9, 12 months to really establish themselves and to make sure they're making the right decision? But once they've made that decision, what should they do within that first 3, 6, 9, 12 months that you perhaps, with all your wealth of knowledge now, would do now?
Keep the lights on, that's for sure. Try not to give equity away. Try to keep the lights on. Make sure that you have enough of a nub of clients who will come with you, who aren't subject to non-compete clauses, and they've got much, much stronger over the years. You will know that. So make sure that what you're going to do is legal and honest and open and above board. Don't nick clients from someone that you used to work for and paid you a salary to look after them. It's not fair on them, and it's demeaning on you, I would say. And even when I left Royal Bank of Scotland all that time ago, I had a number of clients who tried to come with me, and I couldn't take them, and I refused to take them until the non-compete had lapsed. So people will wait if they believe in you. So to go back to your question, think long and hard about it. The grass is not always greener. There is a huge amount of difference between being an employee, where your HR and your pay turns up every month and your admin is done for you and your marketing is done for you and all the other stuff that goes, the lights go on when you switch the light on in the morning, the photocopier's there in the corner, all that stuff's done for you. When you set up your own practice, it's you. You wear every hat. And the early days are the most frightening, but also the most fun, I would say. So make sure you've thought long and hard about your business plan. Make sure that you are sustainable if things don't go quite as well as you hope. But if you have the confidence to do it, I suspect you will probably succeed. But just get a business plan right, get your branding, get your marketing right, get your business plan right, get your mentors or your board advisors or your business partners right. And don't assume just because you work well with another employee next to you, because I see that happen from time to time. 2 or 3 people leave together and then they fall out within minutes because there are different pressures, and people accept roles that they then decide they didn't want to do, and then it becomes all these issues that you will be completely aware of. So short answer, if you want to do it, but think long and hard about it. Think long and hard about the extra responsibility that it will take beyond just being an employee and just having to generate new business. You will have to be your own employee or an employee of a small group of people, all sharing the risk and hopefully the reward, but you will also have to be your own HR manager, your own marketing manager, your own social media manager, your own tech manager, whatever those issue compliance, all that kind of stuff. But lots of that now can be outsourced. So make sure you've got enough money to make it happen for 3 to 6 months. Thereafter, if you're confident in yourself, I suspect it will. There are virtually no financial advisors I know, I can't name any, who aren't drowning in clients at the moment.
Yeah, there's huge opportunity out there, isn't there? There's loads of clients out there.
Yeah.
Do you think down the directly authorized route for somebody, or do you think they should take advantage of things like becoming an AR underneath a network? And what's your sort of take on that?
It's horses for courses, isn't it? I mean, I did my first IFA business. We were definitely part of a network. So one of the reasons I kind of broke away from that business was I didn't want to be part of that network anymore. In one way, you give up one master to take on a kind of slightly less imposing master, if that makes sense. But if they've got the compliance standards and they've got particular standards you've got to meet, they've got a particular panel you've got to use. These are all slightly old terms. If they've got a centralized investment proposition you've got to follow, if they've got a platform you've got to use. But if you have a lot of freedom within being an AR, then why not? If that gets you going. I'm just always of the mindset, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. And I always felt, having been being an AR, I didn't want to be an AR again. I thought, listen, I would rather contract directly with the regulator, if that makes sense, for my standards, and I will stand or fall on the standards that I build within my practice.
A lot of newbies that are coming into the profession as well, they're not seeing the IFA route as an accessible route to get into, but being told that if you go down a route such as St James's Place or M&G, then you're the devil, you're working for a sales force. What do you think? Do you think there's space for these tied propositions and the IFA route? And if someone is wanting to get into the profession, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going down one of the product provider routes.
Look, you got to kiss a couple of frogs, haven't you? It will depend on who you are, what you want. If you want the comfort of an organization around you that supplies it, it's a bit like being an AR, isn't it? If you want the comfort of having something that around you, at least to get going, then I don't see that as massively difficult. There aren't enough financial planners. I keep saying this. There aren't enough financial planners to serve the public need. Unless we have big organizations serving the public need, even if they're not doing as well as some of the best financial planners think it should be done, they are at least getting people insured and getting them saving and helping them invest. Now, they might be expensive. I'm not saying they are, but if they are expensive, they've got exit penalties, if they've got old style looking charging structures, get underway and work it out from there. If they're going to train you, that's a big plus. I didn't get any training. Well, I got 2 weeks training from the direct sales force. That was about how to sell, nothing else. Use your yellow pages. Stand on a chair and say, I've made a sale. No, but if they're going to train you up to a standard, they're going to help you get your qualifications. They're going to give you peer support. They're going to give you managerial support. They're going to give you compliance support. There is a value proposition there for you to consider. And it might be that you have to work that way for a while to work out, you know what? It's been okay, but I do still want to go up the route. Or you just kind of go straight all the way through to be completely on your own, but everything that entails. And it is frightening at times. Yeah. When you don't have the money to pay your administrator and your rent falls due because, you didn't pick up the 2 or 3 clients you thought you'd get that week or that month or whatever, it's frightening. Now, that may still happen if you're self-employed within a larger organization, but I suspect it is slightly less immediate. There will be a process that will have to be gone through, by which time you should have recovered your position, hopefully. So listen, I'm not the biggest fan of some of these huge integrated models, but in another way, I think they serve a purpose. I think and some of them are incredibly popular with our clients. The clients aren't complaining. Now, that's a whole other discussion. Is there an asymmetry of knowledge? Do they understand different charging, etc.? But the clients seem particularly well served and particularly happy with most of them from what I can see.
No, absolutely. And I think, as a profession, as the firms, the problem we have within the financial planning profession, there are IFA firms, but there's not a load of massive ones that have got the funding in place to be able to bring somebody through from start to finish on an employed model, for instance, to become a financial advisor. They just don't have it. And there are talks where I'm in discussions with a few people about an academy, and it's not just IFA, but it's about bringing IFAs into it, training people up and helping support that early adoption of the training and development, soft skills, as we mentioned earlier. Yeah. And then the implementation into their businesses. Without it, I don't think, some of these larger product providers, etc., do have the money to pay for these academies. Now, a byproduct of that is there isn't a 100% hit rate. For example, St James's Place don't take on 100% of people. 100% of people don't stay there. Some of them filter down, leave, and end up in an IFA firm. That IFA firm's got somebody who's qualified and had some training. Look at the bank assurance market. That's exactly what that did. We kind of miss that, really. We miss that as an entry point into the profession, and then for an individual to make an informed decision 2 or 3 years into their career that, well, actually, I don't want to be here, with this one product provider. I'd like to be going IFA, and that's cool, but without that entry point, they'd have never known.
Yeah, and it's difficult all around, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. In my day, lots of people who worked for insurance companies then became IFAs. Lots of people who went through bank insurance then became IFAs. We don't have that sort of that throughput, that kind of funnel of people coming through now. So these academies, they do work. And it's hard for smaller firms. You're absolutely right. I mean, we used to put people on employed contracts, and we would train them up, and we used to pay for their exam qualifications, their study material, et cetera, and then they would become qualified, and within a very short period of time, they'd gone somewhere else because they were wooed away or didn't like commuting all the way up to London from wherever they lived in Berkshire or wherever it was. And I look at people that I really admire. Adrian Murphy up in Scotland, he takes that university from Murphy Wealth, etc. But it's hard on a small firm to put that management time, that company time, the money, the resource into people who then decide, I'm not that bothered. I don't want to work for you, or I just don't like financial services, and at least academies are bearing a bit of that cost about bringing new entrants in. And I've got a huge admiration for Kat Harris and what she's doing about bringing young people through, etc. So there are pockets of it, but there aren't enough of us willing to fund it that way. So then perhaps the sector, if we want young blood coming through, we have to just accept that some of these larger integrated firms with academies are worthy of being around.
I also think as well, with technology is going to make a massive difference to the time it takes to give advice. I was talking to the guys over at Ammonite. So they've sped up the whole suitability report. It's insane. Like, you can get through it in about 45 minutes of what might have taken about 10 hours for some firms. So if firms are looking at and thinking, well, hang on, we can give advice to people who perhaps might not buy at the end of it, for instance, but they end up on our database. These individuals are the next generation who are going to inherit wealth over the next 15 to 20 years. There is a model that kind of offers that new entrant to come in, work on the under 100K type market, that 95% that aren't getting advice. They're constantly on the phones. They're constantly having meetings. They're quick. They're interesting. They're engaging. They're learning the skills, and money is filtering through. It's a cheaper proposition as well, but also they're building that database of the next generation that are going to inherit wealth. So I think technology will be implemented into financial planning firms, and the ones that do that have got that base level for new advisors to come in and work on. Not everyone, a new advisor coming in shouldn't be under pressure to be working purely with individuals that have got ridiculous sums of money to invest.
No, look, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been a very recent AKG report out, and I'm doing an interview, is it this week or next week, with Matt Ward from AKG, and we've got Duncan Muir from Fluido and Gillian Hepburn from Schroders, and they're talking about this, about having younger advisors growing with younger clients, leaning into technology to help them do it. And I think absolutely, you look at what Anthony Villas and Rob are doing over at First Wealth. I mean, it's just fabulous. You look at what Helena Wardle's doing at Smith & Wardle, Money Needs. They are building technology as advisory practices to serve the younger client who's not yet sitting on pots of money, to be able to access decent financial services, decent financial planning, decent financial advice. So I think there are pockets of it, and technology will definitely help. I mean, this weekend, just because it's flavor of the month, isn't it? I was playing around with ChatGPT. And in later, when GPT-4 comes through, it claims it's going to be 500 times better than 3, but 3 is fun to play with at the moment. I don't know if you've had to play with it, but
I have, yeah.
12 reasons to get a pension. It gives you 12 bloody good reasons to put in a pension, that you could drop into a suitability report. I'm not saying that's exactly how it would work, but you can see where the direction of travel is. And firms that get that workflow right with decent technology, with decent comms, with decent social media, with decent marketing, underpinned by really, really good, ethical, honest, knowledgeable advisors, they're on a winner.
I agree.
They will be able to serve younger clients.
Yeah.
They will be able to bring on less experienced, let's say younger financial planners or financial advisors, because they will have, as I said right early on, birds of a feather. So they will have the same sort of life experience as the people they may end up talking to, and being helped with technology to make it slicker and quicker and cheaper to deliver, but also just as quality of service. And I think it's incredibly exciting. It always has been for me within financial advice, financial planning. Incredibly exciting. It's very resilient. The whole nonsense about bank insurance would wipe out advisors, vertically integrated would wipe out the independent. It hasn't happened because they're incredibly resilient. They're very client-centric. They're adaptable, even though some of the old curmudgeons whinge a bit on social media. In the main, they're really good, really adaptable, and they want to serve the client in a way that very few other professions are able to bring to bear. So I think if they get that technology right, they get the attitudes right, they get the recruitment right. Listen, the world is their oyster. I mean, there's a huge part of the community that's, the population is not served yet by good financial advice, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm a commentator on the profession. I watch the profession and I talk to lots of people, and I'm just waiting myself for that opportunity to go into financial planning. I'm not going in as a financial advisor. I want to go in and run a business. And The business that I want to be a part of is one that can serve that 95% in quick and effective way. I'm really into marketing. I'm really into social marketing. I would want my financial planning business to have 2, 3, 4, 5 financial coaches going out there on social media, qualified coaches, delivering an amazing coaching service, having an app that offers that coaching service, bringing that marketing into it and making it affordable, because you're only ever going to attract the sons and daughters of those that are going to be inheriting some serious cash over the next fair few years.
Yeah, so isn't this coming back to, because I know your background, isn't this coming back to what we would call the T-shaped employee? They've got a great core knowledge. They're qualified. They understand, but across the T, they've got social marketing skills, they've got coaching skills, they've got empath skills, they've got whatever it happens to be. Listen, I think these future T-shaped individuals, the world is absolutely ripe for the taking in terms of client acquisition, retention, and moving down the demographic of picking up the intergenerational wealth transfer, of having advisors come up with younger advisors, younger clients, great empathy between them, similar experiences, student debt, etc., whatever that happens to be. Listen, I think the future, if we get this right and don't muck it up by falling out over professional bodies and all that kind of stuff, I think the future is incredibly interesting as we move forward with what technology is now beginning to overlay the people skills with.
And that's why I'm super interested also in the second careerist, the academy side of things, because I'm starting to see the transferable skills from a market that's out there where we can take people from a profession that isn't financial planning. It could be from anywhere, but as you say, they've got everything that's required. Stick them into a system that's slick and works. They're going to fly, and and I'm very excited about that myself, and I'm seeing it happen. It's the old age of financial planning is dying out. It's the service of, don't get me wrong, wealth management, high end, family office type feel. I love that. I love the idea of having that type of proposition, but it's a separate proposition to that more transactional proposition, that auto execution, that robo advice model. The one was underpinned by solid marketing. I'm excited about that as much as I respect the ultra high net worth type approach as well.
Yeah, listen, I think, the kind of, I don't know about dying out, but certainly retiring out or selling out, that kind of my generation, I guess I'm a classic example of that. But I think what we're seeing now is, the older model, using your vernacular, you had a good financial planner who ran his practice. They might have had an admin support or a couple of admin support, and then you just multiplied that up.
Yeah.
So there was always a kind of figurehead who was typically a financial planner or a financial advisor. I think what you're going to start seeing increasingly going forward is professional management of financial planning practices, even relatively boutique type sized firms, where the person that's running the business is actually the operations director or the managing director who's not a financial planner.
Yep.
We're seeing this already. I mean, we had it in Investment Quorum, and I know many other firms do. We had a marketing resource in-house. You can have an in-source or you can outsource it. It doesn't matter. But you are seeing functions within modern financial planning practices that even 10 years ago were relatively rare. But now we're seeing professional administrators, professional management, professional marketing, etc. And that's the resilience I was talking about, that these really thoughtful practices, the sort of practices that presented at Progressive Planning last year, are really focusing on where they want to be, but more than that, what they want to look like to the outside world and the type of clients they want to acquire and retain of whatever strata of wealth or age. And I think this is to be commended, that those forward-thinking businesses are already down that path, and will bring others with them in the way that I guess the early firms within the Institute of Financial Planning did way back then in terms of fees and higher qualifications. People get dragged along by the early adopters. So I think it's. So I'm back on my soapbox. I just think it's incredibly exciting, and we see a lot of that going on within Octo. People talking about what they're doing in terms of marketing, how they're chunking down their client proposition, etc. It's just fabulous to watch.
I think if I was a really top performing financial planner, or if I was a very entrepreneurial financial planner, somebody who enjoyed doing the job of financial advice, the first thing I'd be looking for is an operations manager. I'd be partnering up with an operations manager, and there are firms now being set up purely by compliance people. The firms being set up by power planners and operations, and then they're bringing financial advisors in. It's being run by operations and power. It's like, I think that's really, I get it. And also what it does for me is it gives me that confidence it gives me that, I want people who are in power planning and operational roles to realize that you can be entrepreneurial and you can run businesses. Like you talk about Kathy Harrison, etc. She's running an amazing business.
Yeah. And there are, I mean, that's a very, very unique business, and everything Kathy does is to be commended. I'm very lucky to be a personal friend of mine, but I think you're absolutely right. You no longer need to be a financial planner to run a financial planning business. Yeah. You no longer need to be a financial planner to call yourself entrepreneurial. There are other people. The best thing I did in my business was have somebody that headed up ops. And actually, in retrospect, because I used to bring every single brand new client in, or brand new client connection into my practice, and I used to hand those referrals on to other people once I'd got the buy-in. Actually, in retrospect, I was probably doing myself in some way the disservice by giving stuff to other advisors that really should have gone to paraplanners, just because I didn't want to dot the I's and cross the T's all the time. I could have done that as opposed to paying an advisor to pick that up. I could have done it myself and had more paraplanning or administration support. So there's all that being built in, but people are learning this as they go. And I think it is just, I seem very animated at the end of this call, but I just think the future really is awesome for the firms that get it right and are willing to step away from financial planner, must leave financial planning business. For the practices who want to stay that way, absolutely fine. But if we are ever going to step up and serve more of the public in the way they want to be served, intergenerationally, using technology, thinking about sort of not continual ongoing service. Some clients want to turn up, you called it transactional. They might want something, getting a mortgage, they want to start a pension, whatever that is. They turn up then. They don't want to be seen every year or twice a year. But what they do want to do is pay for service when they come back in now and again. I think all this has to be explored. I'm not sure it's exactly right for every firm, but all this stuff has to be on the table at the moment. I think technology will definitely help.
Lovely talking to you today. I'm going to bring that to an end on that note. It was a really interesting conversation. Thank you for sharing so deeply about your thoughts and feelings about the profession, what you're doing there at Octo Members and your journey and your career. It's very useful for me to hear. And so I'm pretty damn sure the people that are listening to this podcast would also find it really interesting and really useful. And I implore anybody who's listening right now, go and check out Octo Members. Go and sign up. It's free, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, membership is free. Absolutely.
Membership's free. Go along, sign up. I've signed up. I'm going to be, carrying on our conversations, Lee. I hope that, we can continue to work together. And I want to add some value within your community also as well and learn from others. So thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for connecting with me. I really, really appreciate it. And have an amazing week.
Thank you. No, it's an absolute pleasure. And, from my point, I've really enjoyed the discussion. At whatever stage you're at of your career, if you're listening or watching, do engage with the rest of your peers. It is the best way to learn. And I wish you every success with your careers too.
Fantastic. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.